All right, I see we're streaming live. Well, let's just wait a couple, wait a minute or so for Terry to come back. Otherwise, we'll start. We can get through, so we'll get through the preliminary stuff before Terry gets here. Okay, is everybody ready? Thumbs up. Okay, the Finance Committee meeting, the Park District of Highland Park is called to order on Wednesday, December 8th, 2021 at 4 p.m. Pursuant to Section 7E of the Open Meetings Act, the President of the Board of Park District Commissioners has made a finding that is not practical or prudent to hold in-person meetings because of COVID-19 public health emergency. Neither the elected officials nor the public will be allowed to attend regular or committee meetings in person, but will participate virtually. Links to the virtual meeting can be found on the Park District website. Roxanne, can you please call the roll?
Commissioner Bernstein.
Here.
Commissioner Freeman.
Here.
Commissioner Kaplan. Vice President Grossberg.
Here.
President Ruttenberg.
I'm here.
We have a quorum. The first item on the agenda is additions to the agenda. Executive Director Romes, are there any additions to this afternoon's agenda?
There are no additions from staff. Thank you.
Public comments for items on the agenda. Executive Director Romes, is there anyone from the public attending tonight's meeting?
There are no attendees at this time.
Has anybody submitted any comments with regard to tonight's meeting?
No comments.
Okay. Next, well, there's nobody on here, but Roxanne will let us know if someone does decide to attend. We'll let them know that they can use the raise hand feature if they want to get our attention. All right, next item on the agenda is the approval of the Finance Committee meeting minutes from November 18th, 2021. I'll entertain a motion.
Yes, I move.
Second.
Okay, there is a motion by President Ruttenberg, a second by Vice President Grossberg. All in favor, say aye. The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The next item on the agenda is the 2022 budget presentation. Director Peters to present.
Okay. All righty. So everyone hopefully received their 2022 budget book. I believe that was a week ago today, last Wednesday, and has had a chance to look it over. We are going to go through the budget book today, but not really focus so much on the tables. We really focused a lot on the tables at the last Finance Committee meeting. So now we're going to look at things really other than the tables in the budget book today. So we're just going to scroll down here to page 3, so everything we have in green is what we're going to focus on today.
Basically, Mary Lynn, before you get going on this, yeah. Do you have like breaks in there so we can ask questions, or do you want us to ask questions at the end, or how do you want to handle this?
Maybe every couple of pages we'll stop for breaks.
Yeah, I think that's probably more prudent because it's so the issue would be, or the question would be fresh in what any of the commissioners or staff members had. So why don't you just build in some breaks in there so we can ask questions?
Okay.
Speaking of breaks, Commissioner Kaplan just informed me that he's trying to log in right now. If we wouldn't mind stalling for a minute, he should be in just a moment, if that's okay with Chair Bernstein.
Well, against my better judgment, I think we'll wait for Brian.
What happened yesterday when the chair of that committee was?
Let me just see if there's what else is on the agenda. Is the purchase of capital equipment, is that going to take long? Do you want to wait to do that now, or?
We could shift to that if you'd like to do that while we wait for Brian.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's do purchase of capital equipment. Director Voss and Manager Osh to present. You guys ready? I hope I didn't surprise you. Brian, you set?
I'm ready. I can share my screen real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
You going, Ryan?
Yeah, I'll go real quick.
Okay, I'll go.
Let the record reflect that Commissioner Kaplan joined us at 4:05 p.m.
Sorry, guys, I had some trouble with my email.
So we're going a little out of order. So we're going to do the purchase of capital equipment, then we'll go to the budget.
You guys see that?
Yes.
We see your encode screen, Ryan.
Okay. Let's see.
Are these the items that are
All right.
listed in the budget and in the capital plan?
Cal, this is for the golf equipment replacement. This will be for the 2022 capital equipment
Okay, fine.
replacement
Okay.
plan.
All right, fair enough. Let's go.
So just a quick breakdown. In the 2022 golf capital equipment plan, we have the replacement of 2 triplex mowers and a John Deere Pro Gator. The pricing is as shown, $99,851.81 for the 2 triplex mowers and $27,115 for the Pro Gator. Trade-in equipment amount is that we'll get back is $24,450 for a total amount to purchase of $102,517.12. And the 2022 proposed dollars budgeted for the golf capital equipment is $104,000 with a savings of $1,482.88. This is procurement of this equipment is off the Sourcewell Grounds Maintenance Contract, which is already competitively bid. And then this would secure the 2021 pricing. In 2022, I was advised that the equipment pricing could go up substantially. So I'd like to get the pricing now so we can secure that. And then delivery and payment would not be till May of 2022 because they're so far behind with back orders. So with the board's approval at next week's meeting, I would like this to go on the consent agenda if possible.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions, comments? President Ruttenberg,
None for me.
Commissioner Kaplan,
Nope, sounds good. Thanks, Ryan.
Commissioner Freeman,
Looks good and aligned to what we would expect. Thank you.
Vice President Grossberg.
It's all good. Just the equipment we have now will last till then, I guess is the only question I have.
Yeah, we're moving towards more like the electric models of the equipment. The E-Cut hybrid is more of an electric reel.
Great. Thank you.
I'm sure that's music to President Ruttenberg's ears. I have 2 questions. Question number 1, what do you have lined up for 2023? Is there any other capital replacements equipment in the pipeline?
Yeah, there will be, in the future.
Are you anticipating a significant price increase for that equipment also?
I think there is as we get closer to it, but this is all that we have budgeted for next year.
Well, I'd like to see what you're planning on 2023, and if there's going to be a significant savings by ordering it earlier rather than later. I think that's something that we should look at, especially with supply chain issues. So if it's a material difference, then we should look at it. If not, we can wait a year, obviously. That's as it's scheduled. But if you're anticipating, you come back to us in the first quarter and say there's a significant, potentially a significant increase in price, of something that we should look at.
Okay, we'll do.
And the second thing is, I know that when you opened the course, you talked about getting that mower that would go from the tee boxes down the fairway, and you had to wait, let's say, 5 years for things to grow in. Is that still in the cards?
That is something that we'll look at in the future.
Okay, that's all I have. I think it's the consensus of the Finance Committee that this matter should be put on the consent agenda. I appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, next item, we're going to go back now to the budget because.
Do you want to let Dan Voss finish that agenda item?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought that was it. Okay, go ahead, Dan. I'm
There's
sorry.
one more item on there.
Okay, I thought that was it. I apologize. You're muted, Dan.
Here we
Okay.
go. All right. Very similar to Ryan, we have a couple of ball field groomers on the capital plan as well. This is what you see right there, is what we've already had. These also have been competitively bid and are available through cooperative purchasing agreement. So they're $18,418. We have, I have to move all of our faces over here. So this year we had 4 small equipment units. 2 of them were John Deere electric gators, which we had already received. Those were under the individual line item budget, and these ball field groomers are a little bit over than what I anticipated, but overall the 4 would come in at $57,667. So slightly over budget for the year. But we are seeking also consent on the agenda for the December 16th meeting to purchase 2 of these so our baseball season is ready to go for next summer in the amount of $36,837.20.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from any of the commissioners? Raise your hand if you do. Hearing none,
No, wait. I'd like
to.
to know, is the hydro rake not available in an electric unit?
It is not.
Okay.
Yeah, but it did look. There are other manufacturers, but not one that I found. I think the style of work it did that does just more turning over the soil, turning over the clay and stuff. They just don't have a piece that will do the trick for us yet.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And Director Voss, my same comment was to Ryan with regard to 2023. If you see a significant price increase coming for anything you plan in 2023, let's try to preempt that if possible.
Certainly.
Okay, so I'm always into saving money. Okay, I think that's it for the purchase of capital equipment. So let's go back to the budget item, which is it's the 6th item on the agenda, the 2022 budget presentation. Director Peters to present.
Okay, so we will pick up where we left off, which was discussing the beginning of the budget book, starting on page 3, that just gives just some historical data about the Park District. The really only new change we had here was in our values. We had included or created an inclusion statement during 2021. And so now that will be a part of our values that we continue to reflect throughout the district. And of course, we wanted to include that here in our budget book. The next item of interest in the budget book that I want to point out is the letter to the Board of Commissioners from Executive Director Romes and myself. Just a couple of highlights. One of the key things in here, we just want to remind everyone that while the COVID-19 pandemic does continue to challenge the district, we have definitely remained financially healthy, and that has been expressed to us by, of course, our finance counselors, our auditors, but I would say most importantly with our renewed AAA rating for Moody's when we just recently issued our debt certificates this fall. A couple of items from the budget overview. We just want to remind everyone, based on the tables that we had reviewed last finance committee meeting, that the general, special recreation and recreation funds, and keep in mind those are our 3 operating funds, we are anticipating a combined operating surplus before transfers of roughly $3.5 million. And then keep in mind, we generally use our surplus then to fund our capital fund. So we are budgeting to transfer $3.5 million into the capital projects fund at the end of 2022. And then, as we also traditionally do, we have to pull 40% from the general fund and then roughly 60% from the recreation fund over to service the debt certificates. Also, other highlights of the budget that we had discussed when we looked at tables last time, our overall capital expenditures are going to be about $12.5 million. We'll have operating expenditures of about $19.4 million. Consolidated expenditures, when we include our debt and capital, are approximately $35.1 million. Our consolidated operating revenues are going to be approximately $23 million. And then another point of information, our tax support, our property taxes in the 2022 budget represents 55% of our total budgeted revenues. And that is a significant difference from last year. If we remember last year, we budgeted based on phase 4 operations. And so that number was more about 65%. We were really much more reliant on property taxes during 2021 with us being in phase 4 at the beginning of the year in the mitigation. So this year we are hoping to have much more programming revenue to help balance out that split between property tax revenues and programming revenues. New in 2022, like we just said, we budgeted 2021 for phase 4. For 2022, we are budgeting for a return to normalcy, or what people are calling a new normal, as regarding the global pandemic. And so our budget preparation was prepared in phase 5 of the Restore Illinois State Plan. We do, however, want to stress that staff are prepared to adapt quickly to any changes that may arise due to the pandemic, just as we felt we did move quickly in 2020 and 2021, where we could to adjust as quickly as we could. So we feel that we are remaining both fiscally responsible and strategic in the delivery of our services to the community. And with this, staff is anticipating development of a new strategic plan that has been budgeted for in 2022, an updated compensation plan, which is per district policy that we do every 5 years, and that is also budgeted in the 2022 budget. And then increased collaboration with the Parks Foundation during 2022 to help support capital campaign fundraising. So those are sort of the highlights of what we use as our basis for putting the 2022 budget together. We do have acknowledgments. It's important to note that the budget is a collaborative effort that involves supervisors, managers, support staff throughout the district. And we also want to remember that the budget is really a living document. It's something we are constantly reviewing as 2022 continues on. And obviously we report out every month at the board meeting how we are doing versus the budget. And the budget process could not have been accomplished without the efforts of Park District staff and the support of our Park Board Commissioners. So thank you to all. So we will look at our future planning, which is a big part of how we put our budget together. And so we want to look at what projects are in progress. We have the conversion of the preserve of Highland Park, which we formerly knew as the Highland Park Country Club. And also another large project in progress is the Sunset Woods Playground renovation and the site master plan. We have several projects commencing in 2022. Two will bring to your attention: the Centennial Ice Arena renovation and the planning and design for construction of the multi-purpose facility addressing the West Ridge Center. And then we have a slew of potential future projects, including the sports field master plan, which also includes synthetic turf field construction. When we look at our future planning, we also have several other items that we use when we look to the future. We'll start off with our land management plan, and that plan covers 9 major topics: our park maintenance, stormwater management, lakefront maintenance, natural areas, park inventory, real estate, park amenities, connectivity, and cultural resources. Within the land management plan, we have park site plans. Park site plans, that initiative is in response to goals and objectives established in Greenprint 2024 and the land management plan, and seeks to evaluate the district's outdoor parks based upon Park District standards to then offer recommendations for park improvements. Also in that land management plan is the Sunset Woods Site Master Plan, and that plan strives to consider the timeless park holistically and in the context of the Highland Park community and surrounding area. Also in the land management plan, we have the Golf Learning Center Optimization Report, and that is used to improve financial performance while meeting community and regional recreational needs at the Highland Park Golf Learning Center facility. Additionally, we have the Athletic Fields Master Plan. That's a comprehensive sports field master plan that addresses existing fields to meet current and projected program needs. We have a Lakefront Master Plan, and the recommendations from that plan are intended to guide lakefront operations, beaches, capital planning, and support possible future grant opportunities. Within the Lakefront Master Plan, we have the Park Avenue Site Master Plan. The purpose of that plan is to address key issues facing the site, including improvements to the yacht club building, enhancements for non-motorized boaters, and enhancements to the pedestrian connections to and through the park. This plan does not directly address the breakwater nor the boat launch. We also have the beach management plan, and the beach management plan provides recommendations for protecting and managing the park district of Highlands Park's beaches, bluffs, ravines, and other lakefront properties at Moraine Beach, Park Avenue Boating Facility, Millard Beach, and Rosewood Beach. We also have a sustainability plan, and that's an internal document guiding practices leading to quantifiable achievements in district operations. Another plan that we have reviewed extensively over the past few months in both Finance Committee and at board meetings, the capital plan, we have the annual and the 5-year plan. We will not get into that right now. We do have that back in Appendix A and B, which we'll be touching on later. We also have the strategic plan. And due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the environment has significantly changed, necessitating an update to the district's strategic plan in 2022. And we have included money in the budget for that. The district's established strategic planning themes will coincide with emergency response planning efforts due to COVID-19. And that includes fiscal responsibility, operational efficiency, maximize customer experience, and unified and engaged work culture. And then the final planning document that we use when putting together the budget is the annual work plan. Unfortunately, staff are still working on that document. We're really at the finalizing point of that, and we will have that included in our budget programming for next Thursday at the board meeting. And I think this might be a good place to take a break in case anyone has any questions before we go on to the operations overview. Or not.
Vice President Grossberg, we'll start you. I was muted, sorry.
Just very quickly, going back to page 3,
Okay.
I was glad to hear about the addition of the inclusion statement in your values. I was wondering if you had taken into consideration, staff, the order in which these values come out in. It seems pretty random. And I just wondered, I'm just wondering if, seeing as how important they're all important. So maybe inclusion could be higher up or something like that. I don't know. I was just thinking about that as I was looking at that, if you've ever thought about the order of that as it comes out.
On that, I may defer to either Director Dunn or Executive Director Rhodes. I'm not sure.
There is no order to how they're listed at this point. And actually, part of what we'll look at in 2022, when we look at our strategic plan, we will do a refresh looking at our mission and our vision and our values. And so that'll be a great opportunity to talk about that.
Okay. Moving ahead to page 8. You actually anticipated one of my questions, which was because I had underlined the 55% of total revenues under the summary of the budget, and remembered that the other number was higher, and then you stated it was closer to 65-35.
Yeah.
Can you do you have at your fingertips what this was in 2019, or I guess, do you have something like that for 2018, 2019 in that area, what our ratio was then?
It was very close to a 45-55 break, or even closer. It was never nearly as wide as what happened during the pandemic.
So when you say 45-55, are you saying 45 tax or 45 user fee?
45 programming and fees. Sometimes I think it was as high as 47.
Okay, and is there an optimal ratio that we should be striving for? And then is there sort of like I guess just that, is there sort of an optimal ratio?
I don't know if, optimal might be the right word or not, but I know just in talking with other finance directors, it seems like anywhere between that 45-55 split is a comfortable area to be in. It's hard to, you usually don't get a really big swing in those numbers unless, like if we open a new facility and started taking in a lot more fees from that new facility. I think what you saw obviously during the pandemic was just the drop off of any kind of programming. So we became so much more reliant on property tax revenue. But
Right. Right, for sure. That's completely understandable, given that I guess I'm just trying to learn a little bit more about that, what it means to us and to being caretakers of a responsible budget. If a taxpayer came to me and said, well, why are we paying 60% of this with tax fees? Why aren't we earning enough with user fees or whatever like that? I'm sure you have a very good answer to those things. I would love to learn that. So I'd have an adequate response to questions like that.
Right. I would, if someone did ask, I would say this is healthy and it's appropriate. It is within a target range of where we would want to be. And based on our history, it's very in line with where we were historically for the 2 or 3 years before COVID hit.
Okay, this is just gonna be my last point. I guess what I'm saying is that if in a normal non-COVID year, if suddenly we were 65-35 taxes to user fees, I would like to know what my response to that would be and what the district's response would be to something like that. Not that that's what's happened. So that's something we can explore, later, but that's an area of curiosity for myself.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Vice President Grossberg. I would mention that at least my experience of being on the board is that we've always created a goal of being 50-50. We've sometimes got it there, sometimes didn't get there, sometimes got close, other times not as close. But you also have to remember is that not everything the district does is income generating, revenue generating. Maintaining 700 acres of park, it creates expense that we generate no income from. So even though that we're 55-45, a lot of what we do as a district is not centered around generating any type of revenue. So
right, and so just my response to that is that sounds exactly right to me. Then I'm not sure that our goal should be 50-50, right? And it should be more like aligned where it is kind of right now, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, but okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Kaplan.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Commissioner Freeman.
I'm good, no questions, thank you.
President Ruttenberg.
I have nothing to ask. Thank you.
I will, let me just go through my notes real quick. I don't think I have anything here that will not be dealt with later. I have just a couple things regarding the park site plans. I don't remember that plan if that's been presented to the board at any point or it's been presented to the board under a different name. So does anybody, if you could provide me some information, doesn't have to be tonight, but provide me some information about where we are in the process of creating that park site plans. I just don't remember that title.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. I can give a quick update. So this is an initiative that we've done quite a bit of work on. We had an intern over the summer in the planning department that did a lot of the field work, and we are taking that and kind of putting it together in a draft plan. Unfortunately, we're not at a point where we have a draft to share with any of the committees, but our goal is to bring this to the Parks Committee in early 2022, likely in February, to share that, and then we will go from there.
Okay, good. So I didn't miss anything. It hasn't been presented to us yet. Okay.
It has not been presented yet.
Okay, great. And then let me just see if there's anything else. We'll talk about a couple things in the 5-year capital plan when we get there. I think the only other comment, I don't know if it's improper, but I'll ask the question anyways. The organizational charts. I mean, there's a lot of titles here. This is for Executive Director Rome's. I mean, I'm not asking this to be included in the budget, but is there any way that we could get names associated with these titles? Because there's people I see in the district all the time. I don't know exactly what their title is and what their responsibility is. I kind of know who they are, but I think to put a name with a title would be very helpful. At least if I talk to somebody at a facility, I know who I'm talking to.
Yeah, we will send you a separate document, separate from the budget. Obviously, we don't put names in the budget because things can change over the year, but certainly give you a separate document that'll help you see exactly who is associated with that position.
It's kind of like a cheat sheet for the park district, or it's like a scorecard. You don't have to put down the full-time employees. Obviously, I don't need that, but just who the I guess the executives are. That'd be nice to know. Put a name with a title. Okay, that's all I have there. I think. Okay, go ahead, Director Peters. Continue.
Okay, all right. So now we'll go over operations overview. This area really just describes the way our financial statements are set up and the way we report things. Our 5 different funds, which I think everyone is aware of, and the various recreation centers that we report out to you. It also goes over our budget guidelines, our processes, our policies. The only thing we'll draw attention to is our public meeting schedule related to the budget. We can see we're here at December 8th at the Finance Committee. Next week, December 16th, we're going to have the tax levy public hearing and approve the ordinance for the tax levy. Also at that meeting, we will go over what we hope to be the final budget book, so that then it can sit out in public for 30 days so that so the public can come and review it or review it online. We'll have it at the library, we'll have it at the rec center, on our website, so that the public has a chance to go through it and they can comment on it if they would like to at the January 25th board meeting, where we have the public hearing on the budget. And then also then later that evening, we would ask for the approval of the budget and appropriation ordinance. That meeting, the public hearing, will get published on January 13th. So people are aware that the public hearing is taking place. And then the day after the board meeting, we take that ordinance over to the county so it gets filed there where it needs to be. Going further down, just a comment on salaries and wages. If you recall, over the past year and a half, salaries had been frozen, hiring had been frozen. We did early spring last year start granting merit raises again. This budget, the 2022 budget, reflects a 3% merit pool increase for all full-time employees. Also note that according to Park District policy, every 5 years, the entire classification and compensation plan gets reviewed by a qualified third-party consultant, and staff have included this project to happen in the annual work plan and in the budget in 2022. Also, as far as mid-range planning, staff is planning for an updated strategic plan, which is also budgeted for in this budget in 2022. If we scroll down a little bit further in the budget book, the next item we want to point out is our debt position. So our general obligation indebtedness looks a little bit different now. We only have 3 different outstanding tools at this point. We have 2 different sets of bonds from 2017 and 2020. We now just issued these debt certificates in late 2021. And remember that those retired the 2012 and 2013 series. So while we're down to the 3 different debt instruments, we can look at the principal and interest payments for each one that we make every June 15th and December 15th. And with our restructuring of debt, we have kept our payments, they're the same for our bonds. Remember, those come through via property taxes is what pays those. The debt certificates come from operations. We take roughly 40% from the general fund and 60% from the rec fund. And we want to keep in mind, we did increase that somewhat by roughly the $118,000 per year for potential use over at Park Avenue. If we go down and look at our tax funding, if we recall last year, the Park District on the tax bill was at 7% of the whole tax bill. We actually went down by 0.1%. And that is due to other taxing districts within our same taxing districts, so say Highland Park, have increased what they're levying, and obviously not by very much compared to ours, but we became a smaller piece of the tax bill based on what we're going to levy in 2022. We also want to point out our property tax rate, EAV, and extension schedule for the past 10 years. Last year, we issued the budget a month later than we planned to this year. And so at that time, Lake County had already gotten back to us with what our extension was granted at. We obviously don't have that information yet, but if we do get that before we finalize the budget in January, we will add that here into this column. So if we go down now and look at our capital analysis, the 2022 budget includes a few Greenprint 2024 initiatives. We have the Centennial Ice Arena renovation, which with budgeted expenditures for 2022 of $2.1 million. We have the Sunset Woods Playground renovation, which is budgeted for $300,000 in 2022. And then we have the multi-purpose building to address the aging Westridge Center at $1.5 million for 2022. We will look at the budget analysis section now. Again, we want to remind everyone, last year we budgeted for phase 4. We are budgeting 2022 for phase 5 of the Restore Illinois plan, which is what we're also calling the new normal. We do anticipate that results at some of our operations will be better than budgeted if the mask mandate is eliminated, especially in places such as the recreation center. And I'm going to pause there before we just very briefly touch on a couple of tables that we had reviewed at the last Finance Committee meeting. Do we have any questions?
Let's start with President Ruttenberg, please.
No questions.
Commissioner Freeman.
None from me. Thank you.
Commissioner Kaplan.
No questions. Thank you
Vice-
again.
Vice President Grossberg.
You're muted, Terry.
Sorry, just one quick question. Back on page 19, you mentioned in mid-range planning that you have a $50,000 that's been budgeted for that. Can you just give me 30 seconds on what that looks like?
Oh, for the strategic plan?
Mm-hmm.
So when we put the strategic plan together, we usually use an outside party to help us with that.
Got it. So it's a consulting fee.
Yes.
And
Yeah, it's actually, it's in the budget underneath professional fees. It's in the professional fee line item.
Got it. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, is that it, Terry?
Yep.
Okay, it's my turn. Okay, I have a couple questions. With regard to, well, I'm glad that we're, I realize that time flies when you're having fun, but that we're going to redo our, basically review our compensation plan, which we do every 5 years. So I'm curious to see what the results are based on what's happened with the world with COVID. So that's going to be interesting. With regard to the debt position, correct me if I'm wrong, is that when we recently we floated the bonds for $15 million, and really it was a total of $17 million. In the bond issue, was there a specific allocation of where those monies were going to be spent?
If you read the 80-page document that went with the issuance, so you give a couple of specific examples of where you would like to spend it. So we had put $15 million in there for the Westridge Center site. We did have $2 million in there that was said, we were possibly going to be using that for a breakwater and a boat launch, but then we always have the extra verbiage that, or it could be used however the park district, feels is the best use of those funds.
Okay, because the way you've written it in the debt position, for example, at the end of the second paragraph, it says the funds for the debt issuance are planned to fund a redevelopment of Westridge, $15 million, to replace the breakwater boat launch at Park Avenue, $2 million, contingent upon additional construction costs fund through grants and donations. Do you want to leave yourself a little wiggle room on that, like you did in the bond issue, or put a qualifying sentence or anything else that the park district decides? I mean, it's up to you. I mean, I just want to make sure it's clear that it mirrors what was in the actual bond issue.
Right. We can certainly elaborate and add an extra sentence there. That's not a problem.
And it's also in 2 paragraphs Later, it has the exact same thing, says the exact same thing. And then if you go to the capital analysis, it also says the same thing. So if you could somehow qualify it, just because it seems like that's a conclusion rather than, and I don't think that reflects what the bond issues actually said.
Okay,
Okay.
yes, thank you.
All right. And with regard to tax funding, in the last sentence, it says for 2022, the budgeted property tax revenue is 13.6. Exclusive of the debt levy, the total budget levy for 2022 is 11,955, which equals the prior year actual extension. Can you just explain to me what it means, which equals the prior year's actual extension?
Yes, so last year when we budgeted taxes, we actually took the prior year's actual extension plus CPI. We put on top of that, and that's what we used in the budget. We have been getting some notices from Lake County, just sort of warning us as far as we budget for our tax extension for 2022, that there have been a lot of people contesting their taxes, and that some of those people that are asking for those are winning those, and so it could possibly affect what our extension ends up being. And then we also have here in Highland Park, our EAVs tend to keep fluctuating to possibly going down, and then they come up. So we went a little bit more conservative with our budget this year by going just with what our actual extension granted to us from last year, rather than adding any sort of growth to our budget number. So it's a conservative budget. We would hate to over budget our property taxes, and then it not come to fruition. So we went conservative with our.
What you're saying is that for 22, the budgeted property tax revenue of 13.6 is a low figure. Is that what you're saying? Potentially could be higher?
That's right. Exactly. Yes. Yes.
And the total budgeted levy of 11, a little under 12 million, is that a low figure, or is that more accurate, or?
No, so the difference between the 13 million and the 11 million is the amount that we levy for the debt service fund. That's for the bond. So that number is pretty solid. We're going to get that no matter how the county has to divvy that up. So that's included in the 13 million. And then you can see the 11 million, it's about that 1.6 million less, right? Our bond payments about 1.6 million.
So potentially what you're saying is that if that's a conservative number, that 13.6 could be a higher number.
That's right. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And what's your experience with doing this for a couple of years? Is that I'm not going to hold you to this, but if that's a conservative number, what would you consider a realistic number?
14 million.
14. So it's an extra like 300,000-400,000 you're thinking maybe?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Possibly.
And then if the revenue, if the property tax revenue exceeds what we've budgeted, what happens to that revenue? The extra $300,000-400,000.
So we would have, if everything else in the budget is accurate and comes to fruition, then we would have a greater surplus at the end of the year, a greater operating surplus. So possibly we could transfer more to capital.
Got it. Okay. I like to hear that. All right, let me just look at this real quick. And then this chart with regard to the property tax EAV and extension. This is just the history, what's happened. This is on page 25. This is just since 2012.
Right. And actually, we could probably just take a moment and look at this. If you look at the EAV in 2019, we were at 2.383. And then it came down in 2020 to 2.330. So it's a little bit of a part of, the overall issue. And, Moody's was questioning that as well too. Why does this happen? Executive Director Romes and I, as well as our financial advisors at PMA, we said really those falling EAVs are tied more to some of what we would call mega mansions here in Highland Park. You see them asking for certain prices, and, they get a lot less than what the EAV would suggest maybe it is, but the typical median home in Highland Park does just fine with their EAVs.
Okay.
Actually fallen for 4 years straight.
Yes, yes, they have.
So maybe we'll have some sort of right sizing or correction. Or something.
Yeah, they.
Okay, I think that's all I have. Anybody else have any other further questions or comments? Okay, let's go to the next table or next. I think we're on 29, right?
Yes, we are. We're on table 1. We really beat up this table at the last finance committee meeting, so we're not going to really spend any time on this. But just remember, if you want to just have a quick, what's the budget? Here it is. It's by the 5 funds. So you can see, total revenues, total expenses. All I really want to point out to you is this planned deficiency here, this $9.8 million, and that is due to our capital spending, which our gross spending for capital is going to be about $12.5 million, but we're going to net it against grants we're hoping to get and other items coming through to about $11.8 million. And that's all we really want to say about that table. We're also going to touch on table 2 ever so briefly too, just to revisit what we were looking at as far as transfers in 2022. We are suggesting transferring $1 million out of the general fund, which we have discussed previously over the past few months at finance committee meetings. It is not something we do every year, but every once in a while, as funds have accumulated in that fund, we'll transfer that over to the capital projects fund. We also have the $2 million that we have consistently shown in the 5-year and 10-year capital funding model that we would transfer $2 million from the rec fund to capital projects. And then also the $500,000 from special recreation, which again, we have been showing in our 5-year and 10-year capital project funding model. I do want to point out to you that in the budget for 2021, we had budgeted only a $1.5 million transfer here and a $300,000 transfer from special rec. We are going to come back to you with a resolution. And again, we have discussed this at previous finance committee meetings. We are going to recommend transferring more out in 2021 to the capital projects fund, which we also did reflect in our most recent funding models for you. And what does that mean when we look at our fund balance current and historically? If we look at the general fund, we know our policy is 25% on hand. So if we look at the general fund 2018, 2019, you don't see a real lot of similarity there. We know in 2020 in the general fund, obviously operations ceased. We furloughed many staff members. We froze positions. We had a hiring freeze, and we froze salaries. And so, the effects of that is it drives up your fund balance in that fund. And then when we look at our projections in 2021, we're projecting really a pretty similar year-end fund balance on hand. We are still being told, as we were in 2020 by both our auditors and our financial advisors, that it is okay right now during a pandemic to have extra working cash, operating cash on hand in case things start going back in the other direction. In our 2022 budget in the general fund, you can see this going down. And again, that is going to include the effect of transferring that $1 million from the general fund to the capital fund, which is again, something we have not done for quite a long time, but we feel it is safe to do so. As far as the recreation fund is concerned, again, we have the policy, the 25% fund balance. So we can see pre-pandemic, we were about a 40% reserve. Again, in the rec fund in 2020, we know operations shut down. Again, staff were furloughed, salaries were frozen. We did not fill open positions. All that helped drive our fund balance up to 55%. It stayed pretty consistent in 2021, even though we transfer by $500,000. And then when we look at the budget, the effects of the budget in 2022 with that $2 million transfer in there, that will still leave us a fund balance of 48%, which again seems reasonable given that we are in a pandemic. When we look at the special recreation fund, that reserve policy is 15%, and we can see we had a pretty consistent fund balance pre-COVID. Now, we remember in 2020 that we did not spend over $300,000 that was budgeted to be spent on the NSSRA building. As part of this money sitting here, if we recall, we did not levy the full amount for this fund. In fact, we only levied about half of what we were available to do so that we could affect a 0% cruising taxation. I think it's quite blatant when you look at it this way as to why we were able to do that and have a zero effect on taxpayers' tax bills. So then when we get to 2021, our projections show us that we can in fact take that $300,000 budgeted transfer to capital and up it to $520,000 and still have more in our fund balance at year end than is required by our policy by about 3%. And then when we looked at 2022 and the special recreation fund with a budgeted transfer of $500,000, that we are still, we're growing our fund balance a bit there up to 36%. Again, we're being told it's okay to have higher fund balances. So maybe I should take a stop there if anyone has any questions.
Start with President Ruttenberg.
Yes, I do have a question.
Okay.
And I'd like to kind of cut through some of this and make it simple for my lack of accounting. If I were to take all of the cash that we have in the bank or that we're projected to get in 2022,
Yes.
and I take out of all of the, and that includes the bond proceeds, I'm talking about just cash.
Mm-hmm.
And I take that number and I subtract out the pre-approved capital projects. I take out the fund balance minimums, 25, 25, 15. How much money do I have in the bank after all is said and done that is not earmarked to be spent?
I would say maybe we hold on to the end. I think we have something that sort of shows that.
All right, well, that's a question I sent to Brian Gromes earlier, and I hope he asked you to put together a chart to show that.
Yeah, so it's not in a chart per se, but it shakes out. I think you can see it in the ordinance.
Okay, because I'm going to say, putting all this together, that's fine. This is all very nice, and we've heard a lot of accounting terminology and gone through all the accounting, but I'm really trying to find out how much money do we have, how much are we committed to spend, and how much extra do we have if we want to change and move some projects around. That's sort of a bottom line, which I don't see represented. Maybe you're saying it's at the end, but I don't have that answer to that.
Okay.
Okay, anything else, Barney?
No.
Commissioner Freeman.
No, this is what I was expecting. Thank you.
Vice President Grossberg.
The main question I did have was about fund balance. Those, seemed elevated, but you answered as to why. So thank you.
Commissioner Kaplan.
No questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I have actually two questions. With forget, I know you mentioned that it's a pandemic, and I'm looking at the rec fund, and I know we talked about this at the last meeting of the Finance Committee. Is that 48%? Where historically we've been, even though the fund balance policy only provides 25%, we've been around that 40%. And so, what you're saying is that the additional 8% is being caused by the fact that we're still in the midst of a pandemic, and that you're being told by your financial consultants that it's the fiscally prudent policy at this point to run a higher than normal fund balance. Is that what you're being told?
That is correct. And what I would say to you too, come November or December of 2022, we can do what we're doing this year, and we can always pass the resolution and ask to transfer over more money if we feel comfortable with that. If that's where you're trying to go with this.
No, I'm not. I'm just trying to completely understand the justification for the higher, because obviously for the higher reserve, because higher reserves also bring some baggage, as we all know too.
Of course.
So we got to be careful and stewards of the finance of the district. So I mean, there's a medium, there's a happy medium, so to speak, that we don't want to go too big, we don't want to go too small, and we just want to make it just right. So I think that gives us the flexibility if you would basically just just remind us in the third quarter of next year, assuming God willing we're all here, that that this is something that we should re-examine to see if this is where we want to be, because we don't know where we're going to be with the pandemic at that point.
Right, exactly.
And also with regard to miscellaneous income, you mentioned it that the SMILE donations have fallen off with no Champions Banquet and advertising revenue. And again, I'm not asking for an answer tonight, but if someone can come back to us at a future time and indicate how much the SMILE donations have fallen off and how that's impacted the SMILE's, I guess, goals. Okay, that program, if it's negatively impacted the program. And I think that's all I got right there. So let's keep on going, and I'm going to pause you because I think this calls for me.
Okay, so we are going to, again, just very briefly look at Table 3. The only other thing we wanted to point out here, from Table 3 on forward in the budget through Table 10, what we do is we always drop in our 2022 budget numbers, and we always want to have some sort of comparative to see change year over year. With 2021 being the way it was, we budgeted for phase 4, and now we're budgeting for phase 5. Our projected numbers for 2021 include, severe mitigations at the beginning of 2021 being in phase 4, going into phase 5. So also not a good comparison. 2020 actuals, we don't even show because of course we were closed down with the pandemic. So the best comparison we really have is the 2020 budget, because that was a budget put together based on a regular non-pandemic year. And so when we compare ourselves to those numbers, and as we do throughout the rest of the tables in this report, when we come down to the bottom, we really want to look at this surplus. Back in 2020, we had budgeted a $1.6 million surplus, and this is just the operating funds. There's no bonds or capital in here to muck this up. So it's pure operations versus where we're budgeting ourselves to be in 2022. We are showing a larger surplus of about $350,000, which is about 22%, and that's before transfers. So, year over year, when we try to compare apples to apples, this budget, adds a couple $100,000 to our surplus before transfers. So now we are going to jump pretty far forward, because again, we discussed all these tables at length last time at the Finance Committee meeting. So we will keep scrolling down here. And we're going to, there we go, hop down to Appendix A. Appendix A is our capital budget for 2022. We have reviewed the capital projects budget several times, both at Finance Committee meetings as well as at board meetings this year. But this is just, it's a great tool when if you have your budget book and you want to kind of see, what are we spending this year? What are we spending it on? As bids come in, if these numbers change a little bit, Director Smith is always good at letting us know. But that's where that tool is. And it's also important to mention too, that for 2022, we only have Tier 1 through Tier 5 projects. There are no Tier 6 projects in here. When we go to Appendix B, that is our 5-year capital plan at a very high level. We just list each park or facility in here, and then we show what we're planning to spend each of the next 5 years. And again, it's kind of a cheat sheet, a good resource. When we hop over to Appendix C, we made reference to this earlier. This is the salary ranges for the different full-time and part-time grades at the Park District that we use in the budget for 2022. And we can see probably the most important thing I want to point out on here is this part-time salary grade 1. The minimum wage has increased the past couple of years and will continue to increase over the next couple of years. And starting January 1st, 2022, that minimum wage is going to be at $12 an hour. And so again, all the positions that we have that are at that minimum wage there at grade 1, those all need to be increased in the budget and have been increased in the budget. And we also want to point out too, at this time, we have begun the process of a third-party reviewer to look at these budgeted salary ranges as part of the compensation study. And then we hope to have results coming back in 2022. And of course, that's where we have that project per policy budgeted for. When we go down to Appendix E, we show the different facilities around the Park District and our proposed fees for programming for 2022. And so based on these budgeted fees and participation that we anticipate, that's how we come up with our revenue items in the budget for 2022. Our Appendix F is just our glossary of, I guess, bigger accounting words that we use in the budget to help people clarify. And then finally, we come down to really the summary, where the budget is getting us to, and where it gets us to is our combined budget and appropriation ordinance. And so what we will be asking of the board next Thursday is to, we'll go through.
Mary, let's stop right there. Let's do the ordinance last.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, let's go through questions and comments right now. So I'll start with Commissioner Freeman.
I'm just, this part with some things that I hadn't necessarily taken a good look at before. I mean, I looked when we got the packet, but wasn't sure. So your explanation is helpful on some of this, which still a lot of ones. So I don't necessarily have any questions at the moment.
Commissioner Kaplan.
Nothing.
Terry, Vice President Grossberg.
I left my notes downstairs and I didn't go back and get them. So I'm good.
Okay. President Ruttenberg.
I have a question about the fees.
Okay.
I assume that we do a comparison of our fees to neighboring districts.
Yes, many things go into putting the fees together.
Well, I guess I'd like to just generalize, are our fees at least as high as the high quality districts around us, or are they below? Where do they run in a range? Because I saw when we had to look at the fees for Park Avenue, for example, we were able to raise our fees, projecting raising the fees, I thought, pretty significantly. And I don't want to see what the fees are right now, but do we have a revenue source that we're being very conservative about using?
Yes.
So we do have a revenue source that we are being conservative about tapping into to generate.
I'm sorry, maybe I didn't understand.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand if we are using the revenue sources we have to the maximum potential to have the users pay for our facilities.
Yes, I mean, I would say that what we do is we have a revenue policy which guides us on how we set our fees per policy, and we are guided by that policy. And obviously, it's the delicate balance between maximizing our revenue opportunities, delivering a service at a fair and equitable price, and then looking at our competitors or our neighboring communities and comparing. So we take all those factors into consideration. It certainly isn't a simple formula. It is a little complex, but there's a lot of time and effort and research that goes into developing our fees.
I understand all of that, but I guess my question is, are we on the low end, high end, or in the middle on fees compared to facilities like tennis clubs and golf courses and et cetera, and rec centers in the neighboring communities? And I don't mean communities that are not in our immediate demographic area, but nearby communities.
Yeah, if certainly Director Carr or Assistant Director Malzewski or Murin can elaborate if you'd like, but generally speaking, to answer your question, I would say we are very much in line with our neighboring communities. Some are higher, some are lower. It really depends on the area each unique facility has its own structure that is, it's never apples to apples. So you could look at our baseball program, look at Glencoe's, and you could say ours costs more, but our experience is different. I would say it's very similar than our neighboring communities.
Okay, so without getting into details for this presentation, could you guys put together a comparison of the indoor facility charges that we have compared to the indoor facility charges for our neighboring communities, AC Nielsen, up and down Lake Bluff, et cetera. So we can look at our charges compared to the charges for somebody else in the same demographic economic communities.
Yes, we have that information.
Okay, I'd like to see that. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, my turn. Couple things. With regard to Hidden Creek, so I see that you've budgeted like $145,000 deficit. How does that compare to this year's?
It's larger than this year's deficit.
Why anticipating a larger deficit this year versus next year versus this year?
I may defer that out to possibly Director Carr.
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer. There's a few expense items that are really going to influence that. One of the expense items is obviously our lifeguard fee. I know Marilyn showed the grade ranges. Our lifeguards fit into the grade 2 range, which actually for the park district that starts at 13, but we actually pay a minimum of $14.50 for our lifeguards, and that's going to be increasing. That's increasing $1. We're trying to stay ahead of the market on that, so we keep our quality guards. And there was a couple maintenance positions that just from the hiring market, so specifically some of our custodial services that usually are supported at Hidden Creek on a part-time basis, that we could not find labor. So we ended up having to use full-time resources, kind of stretch ourselves. So that's another expense that was not showing up this year that we're anticipating showing up next year. And lastly, our facility engineer for that building left right before the season. So it was an open position for the entirety of the summer that we backfilled with other full-time positions. So that's really, it's more of we expect more of an expense side than necessarily on a revenue. Certainly revenue was better than we anticipated or budgeted this year. And it's going to be more in line with reflecting this year's to next year is going to be really kind of closely in line. It's just going to be more the expense side.
So in short, it was cost of labor that's causing this additional deficit.
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right. Now I apologize. I don't want to frustrate you, but I'm going to look at the capital plan because some of these numbers just did not jive in my head. With regard to Millard Park, I see that we have $290,000 budgeted. I don't recall us allocating that money, and I could be wrong, but is that, I know that we were going to look at it and we were going to investigate it. And I know that we had, I think it was the Smith Group or somebody came out and provided us information regarding ongoing erosion. I didn't remember that we were doing any actual work down there. Instead of, we were more in the investigative stage. So could someone just go over that with me real quick?
Sure.
There we go. Director Voss.
Yeah, so we had brought V3, Greg Walterstorff had come to the board meeting and gave us his presentation, and we were going to start. So we still are working on putting bids together. We haven't begun any work, but yes, it was when we presented the multiple options to kind of restore the bluff. The bluff restoration would be tree removals and some regrading, and then there's that concrete seawall down below. So we had planned to move forward with most of the items that were recommended, except for the $1 to $1.5 million tow stabilization.
Okay, so that's what I'm thinking is the $1.5 million that we decided, we haven't decided to go forward. This is more, I remember there was the gazebo up there and you were going to try to secure that area a little bit more, and and potentially, that's my recollection. So that's included in that work, and that's $290,000.
Well, that was the recommended, the estimate in the study. So we have heard that a lot of the tree removal numbers are coming in very good right now, but we're hoping to get that bid out in January, and then we'll know for sure what it comes in at. So yeah, so it's the placeholder for the estimate at this point.
Okay, so that's so Moraine Park, I have a total of 605,000, which was significantly higher than I had in my mind of what that repair was going to be like. And this is exclusive of the ravine. We're not doing anything with the ravine, correct?
That's correct. So the Moraine Park items are the path repair, which would be the construction of a boardwalk down to provide access back to the beach. And we are finalizing those construction documents now. That's the estimate. And then there's also the wooden stairs right from the parking lot down to the bridge. We have those to be replaced. That's an additional 100,000. And then we also have 20,000 for an addition of fencing on the beach. And the purpose of that is to segregate the pedestrian only and then the dog access areas on the beach, so that we can ensure that the beach, once it reopens, is both a place for people with dogs and people without.
So you're saying to reopen the dog beach, it's a $605,000 expense. Roughly, that's what we're budgeting for.
That's what we're budgeting for all the improvements down there.
And then Moraine Park, the playground replacement. I remember the Sogans were at the meeting, and there was some discussion of whether, is this the park that they were discussing?
This is the park. Yeah, this is a park where there's only a tot lot right now. We are considering expanding to include a 5 to 7 play structures. And in doing that, we would likely need to relocate the playground to another portion of the park. So at this time, we have conducted a survey. We sent a survey out to the neighbors adjacent to that park. We're currently getting that information back. And we'll be coming back to the Parks Committee in early 2022 to share those results and talk about our recommendations.
So is this a placeholder, or is this something that's been approved?
This would be the estimated amount if we were to do the larger project, which would be relocating and expanding the playground to not just include tot equipment. But what we're doing right now is we're starting the process of evaluating that and determining whether that's what the neighboring community really would like to see.
So we haven't made a decision whether we're going forward with this project, but that's a decision still to be made. Is that correct?
Correct. Well, what we're doing right now, we're essentially trying to determine the scope of the project this time. It's definitely a given that the playground needs to be replaced. The options would be to replace kind of as is, or it would be to take this opportunity to expand and offer a little more to the community. So right now we're starting our initial community outreach, and like I said, we'll come back to the park committee in early 2022.
And when is that decision going to be made by the board? Is there a timetable of whether to replace the existing equipment or to expand the use of the park to include additional age groups? Does that come back to the board for the board to make a determination, or is this by putting this in the budget? Is this us approving that replacement?
No, well, no. What would happen is, like I said, we're starting our investigation with the community. We'll come back to the Parks Committee to share our recommendation. We don't have a solid recommendation yet because we're still gathering information. And so, yeah, so it would be up to the park board to give direction on how we move forward. We'll come back with a recommendation. It may be to stick with a project this large. It may be to reduce the scope. We don't have that information just yet.
So is the park committee the deliberative body that provides you the direction, or is it the park board?
We would start with the Parks Committee, and then we would look to the Parks Committee for recommendation on the next step in kind of getting direction on how to move forward, whether that would be to move forward at that point or to then bring it to a board meeting.
Okay, so getting back to my question, so the Parks Committee then would recommend to the board, but the board would provide the final direction. It's not coming from the Parks Committee, correct?
I would agree with that. I would say though that there still isn't any approval. The approval would only come once we actually bid the project out, or tried to purchase equipment. So but what we would be looking for from the board would be direction on the manner we would move forward with this project.
That's so sometime in the first quarter next year, you're going to be looking for the board to provide you with direction on the scope of the project.
That is correct, yes. And like I said, it may be as early as January. We're getting those survey results back right now, and staff is doing some internal investigation. We'd like to have this wrapped up as soon as possible so we can move forward. But it'll be, like I said, it'll be definitely be in early 2022.
Okay, going down to Centennial, where the parking lot resurfacing. And again, I apologize. I know we've been through this several times in the past, but sometimes it's I'm not as smart as other people. It has to hit me over the head for me to really fully understand this. So the parking lot resurfacing, that is outside of the Greenprint Centennial facility renovation. That's a separate line item I'm seeing here.
That is correct.
And so that's is that the same project, or is just a different line item?
It's a different line item. We are going to do it at the same time as part of the likely part of the same contract when we actually bring a contractor on and bid the project out.
So looking at this, it looks like that the actual project, if you back out the Zamboni, the water heater replacement, it's roughly about a $2.8 million project. The Greenprint project, if you include everything in there, it's roughly about a $2.8 million project. Yes?
Yes, that's correct. Sorry.
Okay. And this does not include repurposing or redoing where the gymnastics facility is currently located, correct?
That is correct. We have dollars earmarked in 2024 for that work at this time.
All right. And then lastly, with regard to Park Avenue Beach boating facility, you have the breakwater boat ramp replacement of $2.5 million. And then you've backed out the $500,000. Is that the alternative revenue sources through contribution and grants?
That is correct.
So why'd you do the 2.5 number and not the 2.7 number that we just saw last night?
I have to go back and look at my notes on that one.
So essentially, the project is anticipated right now at 2.2, and then there's a 25% contingency, which brings it to 2.7. So we're basing the funding model that we've discussed on a $2.5 million project for budget.
So the number could be anywhere between 2.2 to 2.3. So when you budget, do you budget including contingency or not, or you just come up with a number somewhere between where you think it's going to come in and what's the 25% contingency?
In this case, we budgeted for what we thought was realistic based on the funding model, based on our capital plan discussions, based on interaction at committee meetings with the board. We thought that a $2.5 million project was a realistic number to budget for. So typically there is some contingency in there. It's just not 25%. 25% is a very high contingency. We would not normally put that much contingency in there. So we put a more conservative contingency in there.
So I'm just curious so when you present it to the board, then why do you present it with the 25% contingency of the $2.7 million when we're only budgeting $2.5 million? I mean, I understand why is there that discrepancy?
So Smith Group presents the budget that they put together. And then this is our budget of what we believe is appropriate to allocate for the project.
Okay. I guess moving forward, when we have other projects and we have consultants come in with a number, and I guess if you put on the slide, I don't, maybe it was there last night, I missed it, that this is what the Smith Group is estimating with the 25% contingency, and this is what we intend on budgeting. So So numbers are matching up.
Okay.
Okay. So looking at this IMRF staff allocation, and this is really just employee statistics. So we're anticipating going to basically to more to full employment come 2022. I know that we the last couple of years have been very crazy with people being laid off and everything, but you're anticipating at least some full-time 110 employees next year. Am I reading this right?
Yes.
And that's pretty much full employment, correct?
Yeah, if we
Well,
compare
I'm
back,
filling all the positions.
yes.
Because right now we budgeted, so that's an additional 12 positions full-time than what our 2021 budget is. Am I reading this right?
Yes, yes. And in 2020, there was 111.
111. So we have one, so you're budgeting one less position in 2022 than we did in 2021.
Right.
Okay. And regarding the fees, I won't go into the fees. And to the terms, I won't understand them anyway, so I'll pass on that. Okay, so the accounting terms, okay? I have a son who's an accountant, maybe that'll help, okay? All right, so the, all right, let's go to the, anybody else have any further questions or comments? Hearing none, let's go to the ordinance then.
Okay. All right, so the ordinance, the budget and appropriation ordinance is really the culmination of everything that's in the budget book. This sums it all up. This is what ultimately gets passed by the board and filed with Lake County. And so what will happen on next Thursday, we will go through the budget one more time. And then we will be looking for approval to let the budget sit for a period of 30 days so that the public may review it and then come to our public hearing, which will take place on January 25th at the board meeting. So people may make comments regarding the budget before the budget and appropriation ordinance comes up for vote by the board. And then that will be published in the local paper so that people know that that public hearing is going to take place. When we file with the county our budget, and you go through and you see there's 5 different sections here, one for each of the funds. Each fund has its own budget. It is broken out by specific line items that we have to show to the county. The appropriation is developed by taking the budget and adding an extra 10% of it. So when we pass this budget and appropriation ordinance, it allows us that in case we were to go over budget in some areas, that we can go over budget by up to 10%, which gets us to the appropriation amount. If during the year we feel that we are going to exceed that appropriation amount, then we would have to come back to the board and amend the budget. And that can happen anytime after the first 6 months that we are in this budget period in 2022. So anytime after June 30th. I do want to come down and hopefully address Commissioner Ruttenberg's questions before. We have to file with the county where we are projecting our cash on hand to be at January 1st, 2022, which would be at about $37.6 million. And we have to show our revenues that we're budgeting for 2022. We have to show them our expenditures, which of course tie with the budget numbers we just showed above. And then what we are budgeting our cash on hand to be at the end of 22, which is roughly $28 million. And now, Commissioner Ruttenberg, I know you wanted to know if we take this money, this is all of our cash on hand at December 31st, and we backed out. Well, this includes the backing out of the $12 million of capital expenditures that you saw above in Appendix A. But if you backed out of this, what our fund balance reserves are supposed to be, the 225% for the general and recreation fund, the 15% for the special rec fund, that would be about $5 million we'd have to take out of this to maintain the reserve. So that would leave us with roughly $22.8 million. And I hope that answers your question, but if not, we can attempt to answer it better.
It was that number at the back here that I had circled in orange and said, I don't know how much of that is less the reserves, and you just told me, so we're at $22 million. And how much of the $22 million has been earmarked for projects that are in the hopper that we've approved? Or that we've said, let's move forward with these projects? So what I'm trying to do is get to an idea of how much actual net cash we're going to have after we pay for everything, you know, in the foreseeable, well, at the end of the year.
All right, Barney, let me just ask that, let me try to ask that a different way. So out of that 22 million at net of the fund balances, is the $17 million that we just borrowed, is that baked into that $22 million number?
It is, except of course, we'll be spending some of that in that item C in that $35 million.
Okay, so out of the 27 million, 5 million is roughly our fund reserve policy. $17 million is, as you pointed out earlier in the meeting, is earmarked towards Westridge and Park Avenue. So that so 22 minus 17, that's additional $5 million. Am I reading that right?
I'm sorry. So I guess I'd want to go up to that 35 million. In that 35 million, we have 1.5 million of that 35 million is for Westridge Center during 2022.
Out of the 15 that we're anticipating
Yes.
spending?
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yes. And then Director Smith would have to correct me, but I believe that $2 million for the Breakwater Park Avenue is also in the 2022, possibly into 2023.
Oh.
I would have to go back and look.
So that won't, so that's net of that then.
Right, so that would have been
Okay.
pulled out too. This is December 31st, 2022. And this is January 1st, 2022.
So that's not, and I'm being too overly simplistic with trying to make that analogy. Okay, try to answer Barney's. Never mind. Try to answer Barney and Barney's question. I apologize, Barney.
No, because it's a concept that I just am having a hard time getting my non-accounting head around. But I guess I'm hearing that there's, okay, $5 million. It's not that we have not budgeted to spend. It's extra money.
I think the best, and Mary Lynn, correct me if you think differently, but probably the best way to look at it is we provided a 5-year model and a 10-year model, which really shows the gross revenue available to be used for capital expenditures, and then the anticipated expenditures along with those, and then a fund balance after that, looking out 5 to 10 years. So I'm not sure if that would answer what you're looking for. I think need a little bit more clarification what you're looking for.
Well, what I'm looking for is it's every year we're going to have income. Every year we're going to have budgeted expenses. And we've sort of anticipated those, and on those projections, what I am never quite clear about, because we keep talking about capital this and capital that. In my house, I have a bank account, and I don't allocate it to capital or to pleasure or to, toys for the kids. I don't know that we're getting, what I'm trying to do is get a picture of how much cash we will have to spend for projects that we have not said we're going to take money out of the bank account to spend. And those are the tier 5 and 6s, because I'm sort of wondering if we don't have a little bit more money in the bank account that is being unallocated, and that isn't, because we don't call it capital funds, that we might actually have a little more money that we could spend for some of the projects. And I know I'm not articulating this quite the right way. It's a non-accounting way of doing it. It's like, okay, I've got cash, I spend, I'm going to have income, I'm going to spend, and in the end of the day, I've got a whole bunch of money left over.
Isn't funding
So
allocated?
I'm sure Mary Lynn could probably follow up with maybe a brief, tutorial on government fund accounting. Obviously, there's GASB
Brian, let me
the
interrupt. you.
regulations
I know,
that we
but
have
what,
to
Brian,
follow.
Brian,
So
wait,
it's not quite as
wait.
easy
Hold
as
it,
a
hold it.
personal checkbook.
No. Yeah,
but-
there's an analogy here to a checkbook. And then once we get caught up in the funds, because we can move money from fund to fund to fund. We do it, and there's no rules against doing that. We can move money
Sure.
out of a fund into capital. But I understand there's some rules of funding, but if we treat it like there's a pile of money, what's left over? And I'm not getting that clear picture.
Okay,
And I don't want to get, and well, I don't want to get caught up with, fund balance and this technicality and that technicality. I want to keep it as simple as possible. And I don't get a clear answer on that because I can't keep it as simple as possible.
So,
And I'll follow this up with Mary Lynn tomorrow. I don't care.
okay, I do just want to come back to this schedule, which may help explain. So right here, our fund balance policy, per our board policy, to have 25% on hand at the end of the year would be $1.5 million. We're saying in the general fund, we're gonna have $2.8 million. So there, in essence, is $1.3 million that if we really wanted to, we could cipher out of the general fund and put into the capital fund. And same when you look at the recreation fund, except that difference is about $3 million, right? By policy, we have to have $3.2 million sitting in this fund at the end of the year. But if we wanted to, we could take another $3 million and transfer it to the capital fund. And special recreation, except of course, we have had to have spent that money in the capital fund on special recreation projects. So there are some rules on how we can transfer between funds. The rest of the money, debt service is pretty much a zero balance at the end of the year. It hovers around $10,000 or $20,000, and we can't touch that money anyway. And then the rest of our money that we were just looking at is in the capital fund. Yeah. If you recall, when we showed our 5 and 10 year funding model for capital projects, we proved out, I think, very clearly that we do have enough money based on our 5 and 10 year projections, that we have enough money to fund our tier 1 through 5 projects. It's those tier 6 projects where we come up short.
Well, that's what I want to talk to you about. And maybe we could talk about it tomorrow or Monday. Because again, I want to visualize a pile of money and how we spend it versus a fund here, a fund there, a fund this. I mean, again, if we take it as a pile of money because we can move it around, and here, like you pointed out, there's like $3.5 to $4 million that's somewhat excess money. You just mentioned that.
Right, but by the strictest, by following our policy to the bare bones minimum and just leaving 25%, but I don't think anyone would really recommend that, especially during the pandemic. I don't think anyone would say, yeah, just leave 25% in these funds. And I wouldn't transfer it, especially this year. We are fully funded for capital for tiers 1 through 5, unless you're wanting to pull other projects into this year. Because once we transfer the money to capital, the capital fund, we would have to borrow against that fund. We can't just pull it back out.
Okay, there we go with the tech again.
Yeah, I'm just right.
No, I understand. And
but these aren't all the same pile of money. There's rules for how they're used, and so it's not just a technicality. There's an issue. You can't just slide the money around between all of these funds.
But I'm not so sure that that's a correct statement. That's what I want to talk to Mary Lynn about.
I am super sure that is a correct statement. I would put my life on the line to say that is a correct statement, or we would not have these. I'm okay. My mind's blown. Mary Lynn, if you could elaborate on the reason we have different funds, just very briefly overview, that'd be awesome.
Right. No, I mean,
okay, but wait a minute. Excuse me, Mary Lynn. Before we do that, I understand the reason to have the various funds. What I am just pointing out, and Mary Lynn has pointed out, that the 25% fund balance that we have maintained as a policy in the general fund has an extra $1.5 million in it because we're overfunded, and we can move that money into a capital project account and pay for a new ice skating pond. I don't know. There are projects that we've deferred that are Schedule 6 or whatever it is that would be great to do for the district.
And that's what we look at every year, and that's what we'll look at next year. We've done our due diligence this year, and we have a capital budget that the Finance Committee, the Park District staff, and the board has gone through, and we have a plan for 2022. And Barney, to your point, we have some flexibility to look at for 2023 and beyond. And every year it gets adjusted. So I think those intuitive observations will come to fruition when we look at 2023 and beyond.
Which is fine. And I'll also say there could be something, and I'll keep going back to this. There could be one of the projects in the tier 5 or tier 6 that would be spectacular to do now. And it wouldn't hurt us because we have the cash available to do it. And so that may prompt us to do a relook at how we can best service the community.
Yeah, if there's an opportunity, and there's board agreement that we want to reprioritize a project, we could halt one project and start a new one. We can always change and be adaptable and to the environment and where the needs of the community are. So I think this allows us to do that. It allows us to be, forward thinking and adaptable at any point. This is just a plan. So yeah, we can do that.
And that's the only thing, and that's what I want to explore with Marilyn. So I, who do not have a son who is an accountant and don't have that crutch, can understand this like, oh my God, there really is $3.5 million or $2 million or $1 million or $12.18. And I'll deal with that next week so we don't have to burden everybody else today.
Thanks for the question. Great.
Thanks for the robust conversation. Just for the record, Commissioner Kaplan left at 5:27. So if Roxanne can note that for the record. Anything else with regard, Roxanne, is there anything else? Oh, not Roxanne. Mary Lynn, is there anything else with the budget? I'm multitasking here. I'm sorry.
I'm done with the budget presentation.
Okay, done with the budget presentation. So I think that there was some good questions asked, and I appreciate the feedback. What's the next step with regards to the budget? What do you need from us?
So I have your comments on my end. I need to go back and change the verbiage. We want to make it more open-ended on how we can spend the debt certificate money. And so I will get that verbiage changed before the board meeting next Thursday. We're also going to insert the annual work plan before next Thursday, and possibly I would have to talk to Executive Director Romes if we would be sending that out before the meeting for you to look at it. So, you're not just seeing it for the first time that evening. Without going back through all my notes, those are the two biggest things I need to adjust here before we look at this again on Thursday. And then what we'll be asking of you on Thursday is to accept this so that we can have this on display for the public to look at.
Okay.
I have to ask, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt. What sort of presentation are you anticipating for us at the board meeting next week?
I honestly have not prepared that just yet. I wanted to see what happens here so I can, I'm sure I would show you the changes that I'm making. I will show you that I have changed the verbiage. We would have the work plan. And we could do this same sort of presentation. We can even be higher level, maybe delve into table 1 a little bit more. So we've gone through this at the finance committee now, this is the second time, but we will not have done it at a board meeting. But we can tailor it however you would like to see it.
Okay, you have 15 minutes at the board meeting to do it.
Okay.
Well, no, I'm just saying, the only reason I'm saying is we have all now beat this to a bloody pulp, and I've been more than obnoxious in the questions I've asked. Anything outside of that I will talk to you about next week to see if I can wrap my head around how we can spend more money. And I think just at the highest level presentation, because there's no reason to go through this page by page, and just we've all read it, said it, we've heard it.
Beautiful. Well, that makes it easy for me.
Yeah, I think that the advantage is that all the board members were here tonight and were able to hear this presentation. So obviously we don't need to duplicate this. That being said, it is a board meeting. We need to provide some information to the public and have them, give them an opportunity to at least hear an overview. It doesn't obviously need to be as comprehensive as what we hear today, and I think that I think that's our obligation to the community, that the community have the opportunity to hear a presentation also. Again, it doesn't have to be as robust as this one. That being said, you know, Executive Director Rome's, we had a conversation earlier today about specific items in the capital plan that are somewhat controversial, and we will need to have a discussion between now and when the proper time is to have that discussion. Whether it's next Thursday or it's when the budget is considered, I think that we have to figure that out, and maybe we'll have to seek some outside help to figure out when's the proper time to have that conversation. So unless there's anything else to be said, I'd like to move on to the next agenda item. Am I allowed to do that?
Yes.
I'm doing it. I'm doing it. If Roxanne, am I allowed to do it? If Roxanne says I'm allowed to do it, I'm doing it. Okay, I got a thumbs up. All right, so the next agenda item is, I mean, she runs the meeting basically. So the next agenda item is Sunset Woods Park Albion restoration bid. Before I turn this over to Director Voss to present, I just want the record to reflect that I advised the Executive Director, obviously my relationship with the Albion company is that they're my clients. However, it's been represented to me, though I haven't seen anything with regard to this presentation yet, that nothing that is going to be presented tonight has anything to do with the Albion company. So I do not, as a result of that representation by the Executive Director, I am not going to recuse myself, and I will consider this matter. Let's one of my fellow commissioners have an objection. Okay, hearing none, let's move forward.
All right. Thank you for saying that, Commissioner Bernstein. I was going to try to say something along those lines. I am here to present this restoration bid. I know Manager Rebecca Grill is normally doing this, but she is in Florida, so you're stuck with me for right now. So
she's the smart one, by the way.
Yes, yes, yes. So the Sunset Woods Albion restoration is the wooded section on the far east section of Sunset Park. So to kind of orient ourselves here, you can see my cursor. Hopefully we can see this up here is the playground that we are currently under renovation, and the building in the middle with the smaller shelter. And that path comes all the way through to the back, what used to be the Carger Center, which you see still here. This is off the current Lake County map system, so they haven't had a new satellite. And that's the parking lot there, and then the old firehouse right here. And I kind of blew this up a little bit, as this area is the area that we are talking about. The green line represents the Park District property. So when the Albion building was built, this firehouse and this section of asphalt, and there was an old playground area behind the Carger Center, and some more as a part of a playground here, all came out and left us with sections to restore. And this was all part of, all worked out 2 years ago. When the Albion people did come and present to the board. So we're moving forward as the project now we'd like to do restoration areas. This whole wooded area we are looking to restore, and natural areas likes to do most restoration in the winter, which is why we're talking about this now. So it's a couple more pictures of what we're talking about. This I just took this morning, and I'm standing right behind the building looking into the park. Off in the distance you can see the old wooden bridge that is back there. So there is some turf, that was some seed that was laid down, but we're going to restore this whole area and all the wooded area behind it. And there's just one more picture. You can see a little bit better of the bridge right there looking west. The bid included some live plugs, some upland meadow, and you can see the different color areas here. So when our natural areas teams puts these bids together, there are different areas that with different seed mixes, different requirements we want to do for the bid. We did get four responsive bids on Tuesday, just yesterday. There were 3 alternates. One alternate was for a gravel area that we didn't really care for. It was just to see whether or not what the prices were going to be. A second alternate was to include more live plugs, which is just kind of helps the process along better than seeding. And then the third one was for, in case we ran into some dead trees that we may have wanted to take out while this restoration work is in progress. So we would like to begin this work just at the beginning of the new year. And then we do all the removals, the invasive brush removal, and all the prep. And then once you get right into spring, it gives it a good, a good time for the seeds and the plugs to kind of take off. So here you see our 4 groups. I'm sorry, the 4 companies that did submit some bids. I do want to point out that TGF here at the beginning was significantly low enough that it caused some concern. Rebecca and I did have a conversation with their staff, and there was some misunderstanding on what is expected. And then they didn't even provide a cost in alternate 2. So as much as we love the low number, it just wasn't going to work. And we needed to move on to the next one, which is the Davie Resource Group there. So staff would like to ask this committee to put in consent agenda for the board meeting next Thursday, the 16th, to accept the bid from Davie Resource Group in the amount of $43,518. That would be the base bid, and alternate 2, which is the live plugs, and then alternate 3, which is not detailed out because it's more just the cost of the tree removals. We may not even need that, but it's nice to have those costs already set, so we don't have to go out and get another quote from another company. I think that's it. Any questions?
I have a question. Since I was not involved in any of those discussions, how much is Albion reimbursing the district for this project?
Up to $50,000.
So this is all being paid by Albion?
Correct.
Okay.
Sorry, I neglected to say that. I had it written down here in my notes. I didn't say it. Yes.
Okay, that's fine. Anybody have any questions or comments? This is all good news. Barney, anything?
Looks like it's an item for the consent agenda, if we get a consensus.
Who else? Terry still on this?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, that was going to be my question is how much on the dime are we? And sounds like nothing. So I'm all good.
Who else?
Consent agenda.
Commissioner Freeman. Sorry, Jen. Sorry about that.
I'm here.
I'm sorry. I'm having a senior moment.
That feels like that's an intentional slight. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, consent agenda for me.
I think this is a home run. That's fine. Anything else?
That's it for me.
Okay, great. Thanks. That takes back. We already took care of the purchase of capital equipment agenda item. Next agenda item is the other business. Is there any other business from staff or board? Anybody?
Yes, I just.
Oh,
I'm recognizing Finance Director Peters on this one.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to remind everyone that our next Finance Committee meeting will be Thursday, January 20th at 4 p.m.
Okay. Director Romes.
I have nothing else. Unless the board members do.
I only have one thing to add, unless everyone else is done. I said this earlier this year, and I know that this is the second year where we've met very often with this committee with regard to everything going on in the district. I want to again recognize our staff for providing us a lot of information over the last 2 years as we've navigated the district's finances through the pandemic. And you've always been accommodating for the questions that and the information that we've requested. And I appreciate that. And I think that this has been a complete team effort between the staff members, the executive director, the director of finance, and the board in trying to navigate a very difficult situation as the district has gone through this pandemic, and which is still ongoing, and coming out financially stronger. And I think a good portion of that, the credit can be given to all of these, everybody who's on this in this meeting right now, because we've all had a hand in that, and I appreciate it. And I do want to recognize my fellow board members, because we have spent a lot of additional time that we didn't sign up for, so to speak, when we ran for park board to participate in these meetings. So thank you to my fellow board members for finding the time to devote to try to assist in our small little way the district and our staff to move through this crisis that we've had to deal with. And this is our last meeting of the year, so on behalf of the Finance Committee, wish everyone a happy holiday. Unless anybody else, anything else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn, but greetings also to you. Great job.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion by Vice President Grossberg, a second by Commissioner Freeman. All in favor, say aye. The ayes have it. The meeting is adjourned at 5:50 p.m. Thank you very much. See you next week,
Thanks.
everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks, everybody.
Marilyn.
Have a
Thanks,
good
Cal.